Well, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
And a very happy Saturday to you, and a third night of Hanukkah. Also, it is Advent story number 12.
Already?
I know.
Double digits.
Double digits, baby. We are halfway there. Halfway to Christmas. It's coming right up. And tonight we have a really great story. But before we do, we thought we would go ahead and pull out the next animal on our Advent calendar made by our friend Debonair.
What do you think it is?
I think it is a Quetzalcoatl.
How did you know?
Well, you know.
No, it's not.
It's not a Quetzalcoatl.
It's a sheep.
It's a sheep. Yay! All of these are hand crocheted, and they go on this beautiful calendar behind us, so we will place it here. And you can see that our field is now getting popular. I think the sheep should go on the hills.
I think so too.
Yes.
I will lift up mine eyes to the hills.
And see the sheep.
And see sheep.
There we go. Well, the other thing that we're having tonight is a wonderful story about a parakeet. And we do have a small parrot. We don't have a parakeet, but we do have a parrot here, just to remind everybody. You have an ornament for the tree, too.
I do. During the nights of Hanukkah, I'm putting stars in the tree.
Good. Tell them louder so they can hear.
I said that during Hanukkah, I'm putting stars in our tree.
Oh,
The
lovely.
stars in the sky.
Lovely.
And I'm a little snuffly, so I'll try to speak loudly.
There we go.
All right.
All right. Well, here, our story is about a parakeet named Dreidel. Here is a dreidel. It's a top. And it's a lot of fun to play with the dreidel at Hanukkah time. And sometimes you wager for chocolate pieces, which are inside here. So that's what, when we talk about a dreidel, that's what the story is. So let's get right to it.
Okay.
Well, we're going to start reading right away. So go ahead, John.
All right.
All right.
The Parakeet Named Dreidel by Isaac Bashevis Singer, who wrote our very first story that we read way back in March about Zlata the goat.
That's right.
It happened about 10 years ago in Brooklyn, New York. All day long, a heavy snow was falling. Toward evening, the sky cleared and a few stars appeared. A frost set in. It was the 8th day of Hanukkah, and my silver Hanukkah lamp stood on the windowsill with all candles burning. It was mirrored in the window pane, and I imagined another lamp outside. My wife, Esther, was frying potato pancakes. I sat with my son David at a table and played dreidel with him. Suddenly, David cried out, "Papa, look!" and he pointed to the window. I looked up and saw something that seemed unbelievable. Outside on the windowsill stood a yellow-green bird watching the candles. In a moment, I understood what had happened. A parakeet had escaped from its home somewhere, had flown out into the cold street and landed on my windowsill, perhaps attracted by the light. A parakeet is native to a very warm climate, and it cannot stand the cold and frost for very long. I immediately took steps to save the bird from freezing. First, I carried away the Hanukkah lamp so that the bird would not burn itself when entering. Then I opened the window, and with a quick wave of my hand, I shooed the parakeet inside. The whole thing took only a few seconds.
There's a picture of it.
Yes,
Right there.
it's right there.
Well, in the beginning, the frightened bird flew from wall to wall. It hit itself against the ceiling, and for a while, it hung from a crystal prism on the chandelier. David tried to calm it. "Don't be afraid, little bird. We are your friends." Presently, the bird flew toward David and landed on his head. As though it had been trained and was accustomed to people.
Right on his yarmulke.
David began to dance and to laugh with joy. My wife in the kitchen heard the noise and came out to see what had happened. When she saw the bird on David's head, she asked, "Where did you get a bird from all of a sudden?" "Mama, it just came in our window." To the window, in the middle of winter. "Papa saved its life." The bird was not afraid of us. David lifted his hand to his forehead and the bird settled on his finger. Esther placed a saucer of millet and a dish of water on the table, and the parakeet ate and drank. It saw the dreidel and began to push it with its beak. David exclaimed, "Look! The bird plays dreidel!" David soon began to talk about buying a cage for the bird and also about giving it a name, but Esther and I reminded him that the bird was not ours. We would try to find the owners who probably missed their pet and were worried about what had happened in the icy weather. David said, "Meanwhile, we'll call it Dreidel." Well, that night, Dreidel slept on a picture frame and woke us in the morning with its singing. The bird stood on the frame, its plumage brilliant in the purple light of the rising sun, shaking us in prayer, whistling, twittering, and talking at all the same time. The parakeet must have belonged to a house where Yiddish was spoken, because we heard it say, "Zeldele, Zeldele geschlafen." Zeldele, go to sleep. And these simple words, uttered by the tiny creature, filled us with wonder and delight.
The next day, I posted a notice in the elevators of the neighborhood houses. It said that we had found a Yiddish-speaking parakeet. When a few days passed and no one called, I advertised in the newspaper for which I wrote. But a week went by and no one claimed the bird. Only then did Dreidel become ours. We bought a large cage with all the fittings and toys that a bird might want, but because Hanukkah is a festival of freedom, we resolved never to lock the cage. Dreidel was free to fly around the house whenever he pleased. The man at the pet shop told us that the bird was a male. 9 years passed.
9 years.
Dreidel remained with us.
Wow.
We became more attached to him from day to day. In our house, Dreidel learned scores of Yiddish, English, and Hebrew words. David taught him to sing a Hanukkah song, and there was always a wooden dreidel in the cage for him to play with. When I wrote on my Yiddish typewriter, Dreidel would cling to the index finger of either my right or my left hand, jumping acrobatically with every letter I would type. Esther often joked that Dreidel was helping me write and that he was entitled to half my earnings.
That's for the birds. Our son David grew up and entered college. One winter night he went to a Hanukkah party. He told us that he would be home late, and Esther and I went to bed early. We had just fallen asleep when the telephone rang. It was David. As a rule, he is quiet and a composed young man. This time he spoke so excitedly that we could barely understand what he was saying. It seemed that David had told the story of our parakeet and to his fellow students at the party, and a girl named Zelda Rosen had exclaimed, "I am this Zeldele! I am this Zeldele! We lost our parakeet 9 years ago!" Zelda and her parents lived not far from us, but they had never seen the notice in the newspaper or the ones posted in the elevators. Zelda was now a student and a friend of David's. She had never visited us before, although our son often spoke about her to his mother. We slept little that night. The next day, Zelda and her parents came to see their long-lost pet. Zelda was a beautiful and gifted girl. David often took her to the theater and to museums. Not only did the Rosens recognize their bird, but the bird seemed to recognize his former owners. The Rosens used to call him Zip Zip.
Zip Zip.
And when the parakeet heard them say, "Zip Zip, Zip Zip,"
Zip Zip,
he became flustered and started to fly from one member of the family to the other, screeching and flapping his wings. Both Zelda and her mother cried when they saw their beloved bird alive. The father stared silently. Then he said, "We have never forgotten our Zip Zip." Well, I was ready to return the parakeet to his original owners, but Esther and David argued they could never part with Dreidel. It was also not necessary because that day David and Zelda decided to get married after their graduation from college. So, Dreidel is still with us, always eager to learn new words and new games, and when David and Zelda marry, they will take Dreidel to their new home. Zelda has often said, Dreidel was our matchmaker. On Hanukkah, Dreidel always gets a gift, a mirror, a ladder, a bathtub, a swing, or a jingle bell. He has even developed a taste for potato latkes, as befits a parakeet named Dreidel. The end. Well, that is a very interesting story. I never heard of a bird as a matchmaker. No. Have you had strange doings with pets? If you have had this kind of thing, you should type it in the chat. We see that there are so many of you watching. Thank you.
We have a pet with strange doings.
That's true. Yes, Errol the Wonder Cat, who is off lurking somewhere else.
Yes.
I don't know where he's off skulking somewhere, probably looking for a parakeet named Dreidel. He heard there was one around. We're so glad to be with you all, and I'm so glad to tell these wonderful and humorous stories. They keep our hearts light, and they also remind us that strange things, wondrous things, can happen even in the midst of winter. So I hope that strange and wondrous things may be befalling you in good ways. And we also hope that you'll join us every night you can. We're going to tell lots more stories. We're only halfway through. We'll tell one every night and right up through Christmas Day. So I hope that you can join us and click like and share and join the Facebook group if you'd like to, or click and subscribe to the YouTube channel so that we can always let you know when it's happening. Yes, Errol is off making matches between parakeets, says Bruce. Yes, I think you're right. Bruce, we know that he often mentions you and misses you terribly.
Well, I think he's making matchstick parakeets.
I don't think, no, let's not talk about it. We're really glad to be with you. Let's sing our good night song and send everybody off to a good night's rest. Shall we sing? Good night, beloved mine. Good night, sleep well, my dear. Good night, beloved mine. Good night, sleep well, my dear. May cherubim and seraphim watch over you and hover near. Good night, beloved mine. Good night, sleep well, my dear. Good night, everybody.
Sweet dreams.
Keep your windows open.